Regenesis Open Education.
Kemudian untuk pertanyaan selanjutnya mungkin ada lagi yang mau berinteraksi dengan Profesor Galadari langsung. Dr. Corey Catherine, apakah bersedia? Dr. Corey Catherine ingin menanyakan sesuatu yang cukup menarik nih. So there is one question dari panelis, bisa tolong membantu untuk menaikkan Dr. Corey Catherine menjadi panelis, dari operator? Baik, iya, supaya bisa berinteraksi langsung. So before we come to Dr. Corey Catherine question, because she wants to interact with you also directly, there is one interesting question also from Dr. Henry Tanojo again. So there has been many trends related to filler enhancements such as Russian lips, Korean forehead. Do you think those trends can be a risk for increasing possible complications with fillers?
That's a good question. So interestingly enough, the Russian lips are, the way that it's injected is very superficial. So given the fact that they are superficial, it's an actual safe area to inject and safe technique. So if you are doing the Russian technique for augmenting the lips, it's a safe technique. It's completely fine.
How about the Korean forehead?
What is the Korean forehead?
The Korean forehead. So the current forehead is augmenting the forehead, so they have like a concavity of the forehead.
Yeah, we do it all the time. Yeah, I mean it's completely fine there too. But if for the forehead here, you would have to use a cannula. I highly recommend using a cannula.
Oke, jadi untuk daerah forehead atau dahi biasanya menggunakan kanula supaya lebih aman. Kemudian untuk Russian lips karena letaknya superficial relatif lebih aman. Baik, sekarang ada bersama kita Dr. Corey Catherine. So Dr. Corey Catherine, please have your time with Professor Galadari.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Jane. Hello.
Yes. Hi. Yeah.
Hello, Prof. I have one question about the complication. If the patient allergic with hyaluronides like me, what kind of management of complication if the patient is allergic with hyaluronides?
Allergic.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So, Prof. Galadari, did you get the question?
I think if the person is allergic to hyaluronidase, I believe that's right. Yeah. I mean, if the person is allergic to hyaluronidase, I would still inject them with hyaluronidase. Okay, you can treat the allergies here at this stage. You can treat the allergies with either corticosteroids, or you can treat them with a little bit of antihistamines. But you need the hyaluronidase there, so there's precedence. So you need the hyaluronidase to dissolve the filler. And the hyaluronidase themselves, it's not going to actually, God forbid, kill the patient or cause any mortality for the patient. And it causes mainly just local problems by too much overswelling that can happen. So if that's the case, here you can take care of it by priming the patient. And at the same time, I would, it's never happened to me, but here, from judging from what my colleagues usually say, they would actually give the patient intralesional, not intralesional, they would give intramuscular corticosteroid, and they will also give them oral corticosteroid pulse therapy to continue on in addition to the hyaluronidase that they have to inject.
Udah cukup jelas, Dr. Corey ya.
Yes,
jadi untuk untuk pasien yang alergi dengan hyaluronidase atau HDS, Anda tetap melakukan injeksi HDS karena saya rasa itu lebih lebih mengancam kalau nekrosis dan efek samping lainnya. Dan untuk hipersensitivitasnya kita bisa atasi dengan pemberian kortikosteroid. Baik, untuk pertanyaan selanjutnya, so the next question still about hyaluronidase from Dr. Elizabeth. Can it disrupt or destruct our collagen and the dermis?
Yeah, it definitely does. But the good thing about this is that it is reversible. So up to a certain point, and that's the reason why we don't. When we tell the patient, right now when you're treating it, you do it in a sequential way rather than just doing everything all at the same time by injecting 2,000 units, is that you do not want to cause any apoptosis of the regular tissue. So if you kind of slowly introduce it, it should be fine. And then, you inject
Okay.
every hour serially, it will be even better. So you can definitely cause sequelae of injecting too much of it at a certain point.
Oke, ya, thank you. Jadi untuk HDS sendiri memang tentunya bisa merusak kolagen atau susunan dermis kita, namun sifatnya reversible dan memang anjurannya adalah suntikan bisa diberikan suntikannya ya diberikan jeda setiap 1 jam. Kemudian untuk pertanyaan selanjutnya, how about next, Dr. Henry Tanojo? You've been asking quite a lot of questions. I would love to have you aboard as the panelist. After I address one more question from the audience here, from the attendees here. Nanti saya minta boleh untuk host membantu Dr. Henry Tanojo untuk dapat berinteraksi langsung. Ya. Okay, so yeah. There's one question from Dr. Mary. Dr. Mary is asking about how to avoid the Tyndall effect when we are injecting, when we are doing tear trough filler injections.
Yeah, so here it's important. So the filler is important. The choice of filler is extremely important. What filler you're going to be injecting. You do not want to inject things that are very cohesive and of high G prime, because they are not going to integrate very well with the tissue. So what happens to them is that they are going to stand out and they're going to come together on their own. And that's the reason why they reflect the light in a certain way to appear blue. So that's your Tyndall effect. So the choice of filler is important. The second is going to be the technique in which it's going to be injected. If it's injected superficially, then there's a high chance for Tyndall to happen. So you want to make sure that you inject deep. And if you are going to be injecting deep, also make sure that you don't inject too much volume. You want to spread your filler. If you put too much volume in one area, it also, the filler gets integrated with each other rather than going across the tissue. And what happens, because it comes together, it can actually lead to a Tyndall effect.
Any tips on what is not too much volume? Like what is the maximum?
So for the tear trough, do not go above 0.5, half an ml. That's maximum in one setting. I usually tell, this is a trick. I usually tell my patients, you require 1 ml on each side, but I'm going to inject 1 ml, half on each side, and I want to see you back in 2 weeks. And if we see you back in 2 weeks, we will see whether you require the other syringe. Here, what happens is that you're not injecting too much in the first setting, and you're setting up the expectation for the patient that they may need another syringe in 2 weeks, so they're ready to pay for it. If they come back in 2 weeks and they do not need it, and I will say 90% of the time they won't need it, the patient psychologically feels better because they go like, wow, I only needed half a syringe. That means I'm really very good. My body's really good. It accepted the filler even better. So you have to play a little bit of psychology in that aspect. But if they needed that other syringe, they are ready to pay for it because you've already prepared them for the fact that they need another extra, or they might need another extra.
So, hey, okay, great. I have typed it in Indonesian also in the chat, so I don't have to translate it audibly. And let's have, hi there, Dr. Stanley and Dr. Henry. You know what? You guys make me like, I have to like rush with the questions, and you come up with a lot of questions. So I would really love to have you on board and ask your questions directly to Professor Hassan Jagadari. Please take your time, my lovely colleague.
Yeah, we are as one of the treatment for the complications, the uses of the hyperbaric chamber. And do you have any experience or comment about that kind of treatment, Professor?
Yeah, I can tell you. I mean, I've had a couple of patients that I've put into the hyperbaric chamber, and it works wonderfully. The issue is that you've always it can be covered by insurance, so the insurance can also cover the hyperbaric chamber. You have to make sure that the chamber is available. In most circumstances, anywhere that they have an area where, for example, a diving center or so forth, they usually will have a hyperbaric chamber because they usually will treat that, for example, for patients who deep dive. So it is readily available. It's becoming more readily available. And it requires a very small amount of period of time for them to be exposed to the hyperbaric chamber. So it usually doesn't last, according to the patients that I've sent, it doesn't last more than 10-15 minutes each time. And usually also they will probably kind of go for not more than a week. And that's the time in which, for example, the wound is going to be kind of completely healed by that time. Now, the use of that hyperbaric chamber, in addition to proper wound healing, making sure that you're putting an occlusive, material on top of the wound, really helps the wound heal very, very much faster than just, regular.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do you still have time for Dr. Stanley has another questions?
Bagaimana untuk panitia? Masih boleh lanjutkan? Mungkin 2 pertanyaan lagi ya.
Bisa dok, kita perpanjang 10 menit waktunya dari yang telah ditentukan.
Oke, terima kasih. Ya, bisa dok. Monggo, silahkan.
Okay, hi, Dr. Thank you for a comprehensive lecture, and then you went details on the complications. So my first question, so I've been given a 2 opportunity to ask questions. My number 1 question will be, how we recognize the formation of biofilm reactions, and what are the management we need to do to the reactions. And my second question will be a little bit out from the topic. It's about hands filler. So what are the essential points that we need to understand about the hand fillers and how to avoid the complication, even though it's rare? But maybe you have some strategy that would be we could apply it whenever we do the hands filler. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question, so the second question is the hand question. The first question had to do with, if you could just repeat.
The biofilm.
Oh, the biofilm. Yeah, so biofilm becomes very difficult to kind of, and I mentioned this, becomes very difficult to differentiate between it and an inflammatory nodule. But if it's red, if it's indurated, you try treating it with intralesional steroid and it comes back again, then there is a high chance that this is a biofilm that happens. And there are prerequisites that biofilms can happen. Is that, and I mentioned this in my talk, is that you're layering filler on top of filler on top of filler. You're putting basically too much filler at one setting. There's a high chance that there's also going to be a biofilm that's going to be there. The treatment of choice when it comes to biofilm is going to be antibiotics first. Even though they're quite resistant to antibiotics, we'll try with antibiotic first, whether it's Cipro, whether, for example, it's azithromycin, for example, I would treat with that first. Then I would follow up with hyaluronidase. I mean, you definitely want to make sure that, remember, the reason why you have this bacteria is that it's protected around this compartment of like this fort of hyaluronic acid, which is a sugar. So you want to make sure that the fort where it's being protected is removed. So that's the reason why you would start off with hyaluronidase into that area too. So you do you give the antibiotics, you do the hyaluronidase, and then you see if the patient is getting better. In most circumstances, they will get better. If they do not get better, then you might want to think about probably using, for example, 5-FU, or maybe even sometimes surgical treatment to kind of make sure that all the filler is completely gone. The other question with regard to the hands, thankfully, most of the time for the hands, you are not going to witness vascular compromise. The issues that happen with the hands is usually the effect of nodule formation. And here, it's very important on what type of filler you're going to be using, and the level in which you're going to be injecting, and also the skin type the patient has. If the patient is quite old, has very, very thin skin, and if you are going to be injecting hyaluronic acid into that area, you are going to run the risk of developing Tyndall effect. So you want to be very careful in that aspect. Okay, so here my recommendation would probably be using something like calcium hydroxylapatite, which is my gold standard when it comes to injecting the hands, because the skin of the hands is generally much thinner, for example, than that of the face. If you are going to be using calcium hydroxylapatite for the hands, remember, don't use the native calcium hydroxylapatite. You want to reconstitute it or dilute it. I would use a dilution of a 1-to-1. So if I'm using, for example, 1.5 ml of calcium hydroxylapatite, I will also mix it with 1.5 ml of saline or lidocaine. So you end up with 3 ml syringe, and then you spread it basically onto the dorsal aspect of the hand. So, and I would use a cannula. My entry point would be more on the proximal side, and then it basically goes across this way. Okay, so with just one entry point. It's much better than going from the distal aspect by 3 different entry points. So it's much better in that aspect. The question here a lot of people ask is, what would you do with the fingers? I would tell them I would try to avoid injecting any fillers.
That will be my next question to you. Thank you for reading my mind.
There you go. So I would avoid any injection into the fingers. It's extremely, extremely important for you to avoid doing so. Now, a lot of times patients complain of where the knuckles are, that, here, this area is a little bit wrinkly. Here you could use something that is a non-cross-linked HA or a semi-cross-linked HA onto the area. Just make sure if you are going to be injecting them, you need to inject them directly onto the knuckles themselves. Do not inject them on the lateral aspect. The finger's blood supply comes in on the lateral of the digit. So you want to, it doesn't get it anywhere from the midline. So here you can definitely inject it right there into the area where it requires.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor. It's a privilege for having you today with us. Thank you, Dr. Jane.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Henry and Dr. Stanley. Okay, so we have another 3 minutes. I should seize the time. So coming from Dr. Dartri and also Dr. Meiti about the usage of nitroglycerin and also isosorbate dinitrate instead of nitroglycerin, because some says that using nitroglycerin is not recommended because it can cause the emboli to travel. What is your opinion about that?
That's the reason it is not in my protocol. This is one of the reasons why I do not include nitroglycerin in my protocol, is that because as the person rightfully mentioned, it can definitely lead to that. And, patients will, it will cause a huge headache for the patient. So I would avoid using nitroglycerin.
And then the second question about sildenafil. What is the dosage of using sildenafil?
The regular dose, I think it's 100 milligrams.
Okay, regular dosis yang biasa untuk sildenafil 100 milligram. And how about isosorbate dinitrate? Would you recommend it for?
Isosorbate nitrate is nitroglycerin, so I mean I would not recommend it now.
Okay, and then so another question about allergic to hyaluronidase. Is it possible to pre-treat the patient with corticosteroids and antihistamine before?
You do not want to kind of, you mean pre-treat them before injecting them?
Yeah, before injecting
sure, but you have to keep in mind that the allergic reaction to hyaluronidase is very, very low. So I mean, not everybody have it. Here you would ask them, for example, if they have a bee sting, if they have an allergy to a bee sting. If they do have an allergic reaction to a bee sting, then you know that this is a documented proof that they have hyaluronidase reaction. And in this case, you would want to pre-treat them with steroids. But if they do not, no, the patient is already with you. So they're not going to go anywhere. You inject them with the hyaluronidase and you're going to observe them. If you're going to observe them first, if the hyaluronidase is working on the area of vascular compromise, plus at the same time, you're also going to observe them if they're developing any allergic reaction to it. So you would not pre-treat them, just observe and see if they require any treatments after, if they develop a problem.
Okay, thank you. Another question. I think this will be the last question from Dr. Rina Elvia Lubis. How to avoid hypersensitivity reaction of filler and how to manage it if it happens?
Yeah, that's unfortunate because we do not know whether they're going to happen or not. They're more common in certain types of fillers, and I mentioned the low molecular weight fillers in which they can happen. And they are, as I mentioned, they're usually, the hypersensitivity reactions are also self-limiting. So they will go away with just, on their own most of the time. There is a trigger. Usually the trigger, for example, is sore throat, tonsillitis, they're going to the dentist, they've had, so any trigger that kind of enhances their immunological system. And if that happens, you can always put a little bit of intralesional steroid to calm it up, or for example, 5-FU, 5-fluorouracil to calm it down until it goes away. But that's the only way that you could try to avoid them. If it is caused by the COVID vaccine, however, as I mentioned, you might want to consider giving oral ACE inhibitors such as lisinopril.
Okay. Can we still come up with one question, Professor Galadari, about a patient with anticoagulant?
Okay.
Yeah, how would you recommend to avoid bruising?
No. So the reason why there are anticoagulants, for example, such as warfarin or heparin or even aspirin, is that because they have other comorbidities. Maybe they have, coronary artery disease or, atrial fibrillation or anything of that sort. That's the reason why they're on these medication. So here, you do not tell them to stop it. You tell them that they are going to bruise, and the bruise may last longer. Okay, but the last thing you want to do is tell them to stop your warfarin or your heparin so that you can not have a bruise, but then the patient ends up with developing, for example, God forbid, a stroke or an MI. Okay, but hey, at least their lips look good. So you really want to try to avoid that. The reason why we ask about the anticoagulants is that you prepare the patient that they're going to have a longer lasting bruise if it develops.
Oke, iya. Jadi untuk antikoagulan, biasanya pasien dengan antikoagulan memerlukan antikoagulan tersebut untuk hal-hal yang lebih penting bagi kesehatannya. Dan yang penting adalah kita beritahu kepada pasien bahwa jika terjadi hematoma akan berlangsung lebih lama. So, Professor Galadari, I would love to say thank you so much for giving your time to us. Dan juga terima kasih kepada para peserta pada sore hari ini yang sudah memberikan waktunya bersama-sama dengan kita. Professor Galadari, I have always been starstruck by you every time I host you, and that I forgot to tell you how fantastic you look today with that jacket on you. Thank you so much, Professor Galadari, for such an thorough presentations, and I hope we can have you again in the future with us. And I would love to have you to probably give us some take-home messages or final notes before we close this session.
Well, my final note here is it's the first thing, a number of things. One is you really have to understand the limitations of your capabilities and your expertise. Don't go all cowboy saying that you can do everything. Know your limits and learn how to kind of, say no to patients. The other thing is always learn. We're all here to learn. I mean, I'm learning from your expertise. You're learning from mine, hopefully. And if you say that I know everything, I'm not going to learn anything, that's the time in which, you're not going to progress. So no matter how big of a doctor you are, you still, and how experienced, you can still develop complications, and you can always learn from your colleagues. So that's going to be another thing. And the third thing and the last thing is always establish a rapport with patients. I've had complications happen to me all the time, but because I've, of my relationship with my patients and how I deal with them and how I interact with them, so they completely forget that they've had a problem and they're happy. So, and we make sure that the complication is gone and we treat it, but they still come back again, and they understand that they're in the right hands, because not only is this doctor knowing what to do, he also knows if there's something wrong that happens, he also still knows what to do. So that's, another thing that people have to take into mind.
Oke, thank you so much, Professor Galadari. Jadi take home message-nya adalah tahu limit kita sendiri, tahu kemampuan kita sendiri, kemudian jangan lelah untuk upgrade dan update terus dengan ilmu pengetahuan yang baru. Dengan itu saya izin untuk mengajak para dokter saya untuk mengikuti online Pro Series berikutnya juga yang akan hadir. Kemudian yang ketiga, binalah hubungan yang baik dengan pasien Anda supaya mereka tahu bahwa mereka berada di tangan yang tepat.
Regenesis Open Education.